Hey, what's up, everybody? Chicago Goonie here, bringing another Arsenal talk. Well, in this Arsenal talk, I'll just be covering kind of like a season, uh, you know, review, if you will. Talking about past games, everything that I can remember, and then, talking about players as well. Player of the year, defensive player of the year. Um, there's probably only one player for young player of the year for Arsenal. But I'm just going to go through it a little bit. It was a tale of two halves, different half of the season. It was night and day from the first half of the season to the second half of the season. Starting the season off in the Community Shield against Manchester City, watching that game and watching how dominant we were, how badly we wanted to win that game. You thought it was going to be a great season for Arsenal. You thought we're really going to challenge for the league this year. We're going to really have an opportunity to even win it. I think that's what the perception was prior to the season starting. We still had people coming back, still trying to get people fit and healthy from the World Cup. At this stage, the Germans were just coming back into the team. The French players were just coming back into the team and trying to get fit and trying to get match fitness. Theo Walcott was still out at the time. Um, but we weren't starting the season with any injuries of note other than Lauren Koscielny, who had a an Achilles problem going into the season. I mean, you could see it in the Emirates Cup. You could see it in the Manchester City game. Um, you know, you were kind of holding your breath once that season started, just because of the fact that if you know anybody with an Achilles injury, you follow sports, you understand of how severe an injury that could be, especially if it gets worse, especially if you don't get the proper amount of healing time. But going into the season, we were all on a high. We thought we were really going to challenge this year, and like I said, it was just a tale of two halves. Even starting in the Crystal Palace game, leading up to this game, which was the opener of the season for the Premier League, we were running our normal formation, 4-2-3-1, and all of a sudden in this Crystal Palace game, we come out into a 4-1-4-1, which is more of a defensive formation rather than an attacking formation. Really helps to clutter the midfield, and this is what we were running. Fans were even screaming for it. Fans are still screaming for whatever reason, to try to get Aaron Ramsey and Jack Wilshere on the pitch at the same time. But you could see it even from game one. It just wasn't going to work because they were confusing each other. Neither knew how to. Neither knew when the other one was going to go forward, when the other one was going to play back and help defend. It was kind of like just a clusterfuck. Um, and, and on top of that, we couldn't break through and score goals. That was the major thing. It was a late winner in that Crystal Palace game by Aaron Ramsey. The next game you go to Batikas, and it's a 0-0 draw. We couldn't do anything that game. They parked the bus. They parked the bus pretty much for two legs, but at the same time, we couldn't really do anything. Even going into that Everton game, we had to come back. We were 2-0 down at halftime, and we had to come back just to draw that game, which you thought it would give us some confidence just because of the fact that the previous season we got 0 points when we went up to the Northwest, Everton, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Manchester City. And I guess you can say it was a tale of two seasons when we went up there this time. Um, but again, running the wrong formation, playing players out of position. We even brought Mertesacker and Ozil back for that Everton game too early, just because of the fact that that's when Koscielny basically went down, and we had to force Mertesacker back in quickly. Same with Ozil. We were playing Ozil on the left side. Sanchez was on the right, Ozil was on the left, and then we were trying to play Santi and even Aaron or Aaron and Jack in the middle, with of course Mikel Arteta being the DM, and it was just all wrong from the start. Of course, after that Everton game, that's when Olivier Giroud went down with his ankle injury, and that really put us on the back foot. That went into panic mode going into the last day of the transfer window when we finally, we signed Danny Welbeck. That was pretty much a, uh, a panic buy because we just didn't have anybody else. We had Yaya Sanogo. That was basically it. And up to this point, he still wasn't scoring goals. He couldn't even, there was plenty of rumors saying he couldn't even score in training. And that's not a single striker that you want to go into, going into Premier League season, going into Champions League, and it was just a headache. Going into the Leicester City game, I mean, again, points dropped. I know Leicester City, I know they're getting a ton of praise for staying up and making a late run. But at the same time, when you play against a newly promoted side, you should win when you're Arsenal. You shouldn't settle for a draw, and that's almost like what happened during that game. The next game was Manchester City, and Jesus, again, had to come back. They were up 1-0. We had to come. We finally caught our legs. We were dominant in that game too, much like the Community Shield, but we just couldn't break through with goals. Of course, Jack Wilshere, Alexis Sanchez had a beautiful volley, one of the goals of the season, even for Arsenal, even in the Premier League. And but like old Arsenal, uh, we were suspect at the back. We were suspect during set pieces, and that's what killed us. And again, for the second straight game, we dropped points. Um, you know, and then of course we started off our Champions League group stage against Dortmund at Dortmund, and we just got murdered. It was, I mean, pretty much next to that Monaco game. That was definitely one of the worst performances by Arsenal during the season. We were just, I mean, we couldn't do anything. The high line, the high pressing from Dortmund just murdered us. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't keep control of the ball. Passing was horrible. We were just completely off our game. We just got nuked during that game. Um, and you would have never thought, even going beyond this game, the troubles that Dortmund would have throughout the rest of the season. Yes, Dortmund had a ton of injuries they had to deal with, but at the same time, they still have enough quality to be players, especially in the Bundesliga. And especially after this game, you would have just never thought the drop that Dortmund would have going forward. But in that game, that was just a confidence killer completely. Um, then it stepped up to the Aston Villa game, and this is, I mean, this is where it got kind of weird in the season, because even in that Borussia Dortmund game, we were playing the 4-1-4-1. All of a sudden, we went to Aston Villa away, and we switched back to the 4-2-3-1. Ozil was in the number 10 spot. Alexis Sanchez was on the left. I believe Ox started that game as well. Um, but again, you were, by this time in the season already, a month into the season, you were screaming for Mesut Ozil to play the number 10, and he had an outstanding game that game. Him and Danny Welbeck hooked up. I know Mesut Ozil had a goal and assist in that game. We dominated them. We killed Aston Villa in that game. And what happens? We play Southampton and Tottenham back-to-back games, and we went right back to the 4-1-4-1. Why? Who knows? Again, playing players out of position. That was the title of our first half of the season. It was injuries, playing players out of position, and the tactics were all wrong. That was the unfortunate part. And again, we played Southampton at home in the Capital One Cup. We ended up losing that game. We have Tottenham at home. We ended up drawing that game. Again, points dropped against that shitty side. Um, and it should have never happened. Again, still playing players out of position, still wrong formation, wrong tactics, wrong player setup, and that's what lost us, or that's what drew that game. But then again, we play Galatasaray at home in the Champions League, and we go right back to the 4-2-3-1 with Mesut Ozil playing as a number 10 instead of playing him on the left side. And what happens? We dominate that game. We were up 4-0 until Szczesny got his red card, and that brought us down to 10 men, and then we conceded. But again, we got to win in the group stage, our first win, to give us some confidence. And then again, we go to Chelsea right after that. And then what happens again? We go right back to the 4-1-4-1 formation. Again, can't score any goals, wrong formation, players out of position. That's where Mesut Ozil got his knee injury. Another huge player, along with, Koscielny was out. Or no, Koscielny was, I think, back by then, but he was still an ailment. He was still hurting by that time. You had Ozil out after this Chelsea game. You already had Giroud out. I believe Debuchy was almost about there to get injured again. He had another, what was it, ankle or knee injury. He had a shoulder injury against the Stoke game at home, but he was ready to get injured somewhere around this time as well. And of course, we play Hull City a week later, and we go right back to the 4-1-4-1, draw the game, couldn't score enough goals. We needed to come back in that game again. There was a lot of comebacks to even just draw and get a point from a game, even at home. And it was just depressing. It really was by this time of the season. It was really depressing. And you heard all the Van Gaal people just like front and center during this time of the season, because it should have never happened. We still had enough quality. We were just running the wrong tactics, running the wrong players in certain positions. And again, points dropped at home, and that's not a place where you want to drop points, especially early in the season. And by this time, after that Chelsea game, after this Hull City game, going into the Chelsea game, though, we were still unbeaten, but we were, I believe, 7 points back already from Chelsea. And of course, we lost. We were 10 points back. And from that point on, it was just we were trying to play catch up, and we just couldn't do it because we couldn't score any goals. We couldn't, win games. We were dropping points left and right. Then we had both legs of the Anderlecht for Champions League. The away game, again, we had to come back and score a late game winner to win that game away. And then we had a home. We were up 3-0. We threw it away. That pretty much damaged us to win the league or win the group, even tie the group, and possibly win it on goal differential from Dortmund. So that put us on the back foot. More just the confidence was just not there early in the season. And then after that Anderlecht home match, we go to Swansea City, drop points. We give up a late couple goals actually, to Swansea City, and we drop points there. We dropped 3 points. We had Manchester United at home, and they killed us on the counter. We were dominating that game, possession-wise. We were creating chances. We just couldn't do anything until late in the game. Olivier Giroud had a screamer. That was one of his first games back from injury. I believe it was actually his first game back from injury, because I don't remember him playing in the Swansea City game. And that game should have never happened. We were far and away better than Manchester United this season. Even given our injuries at that time, we were still far and away better than them. We should have beat them. We should have beat them at home, and we just didn't. We just couldn't do it because we just got hit in the counter attack again. This is around the time too Mikel Arteta went down. I think we were having Flamini as a DM, and he just wasn't playing like he was last season. I guess after that, this is about the time that we started to gain some momentum a little bit. We played Dortmund at home, and it was reversal of what happened to us at Dortmund. We killed them this time. We were dangerous. We were high pressing. We were, we had all the possession. Dortmund couldn't do anything. This is when Dortmund was really falling by the wayside in their league. After that, we went to West Brom, won 1-0. We had another tough game against Southampton. They played us tough this year. Out of a lot of the sides Maybe other than Chelsea, they probably played us the toughest this season. Great defensively, they well managed. The players knew their roles. They beat us in the Capital One Cup. This was a tough game too. Alexis Sanchez was a late winner, and pretty much saved us for that game. Then we went to Stoke City. This is about the time when we finally switched back to the 4-2-3-1. That was going to be our main formation again, because even up to that Southampton game, we were still playing that 4-1-4-1, and everybody was screaming for tactics and to change the tactics, to change the formation, play players in position, in the proper position, and but in the Stoke City game, I mean, we went down 3-0 within the first, what was it, like 15 minutes. I mean, it was nuts. I remember being at a pub and watching that game, and it was a headache. But they put a good fight into it. They tried to come back and win it, and it just wasn't there. But you saw the change in this Arsenal side from this game alone. Yes, they went down 3-0. Yes, it was kind of like an embarrassing loss. We've always had a tough time going to Stoke City just because they play rugby instead of football. But at the same time, you saw the confidence, the difference in confidence in the team, especially with the formation change. Of course, Mesut Ozil was still out at this time. Santi Cazorla was playing in 10. Alexis Sanchez was playing on the left side. You saw Oxlade-Chamberlain, Danny Welbeck playing up top. Giroud was back playing up top. Danny Welbeck was switching off of playing striker and on the right wing along with the Ox. I believe Theo was almost back for this, but he was being nursed back. He was basically just on the bench. Or was it West Ham? I don't know. I think it was Newcastle actually which was coming up, but you can just look at these next few fixtures and you can see the change just from changing the formation. Galatasaray away 4-1, and that was basically playing our B team. Newcastle at home 4-1. We went up to Liverpool. We drew the game. We gave up a late winner when they were down to 10 men. That should have never happened again. Dropping points when we should have had all 3 points. We played. This is playing Liverpool as well. We saw little glimpses of what Arsenal was trying to work on as well, as far as defensively goes, and trying to play more defensive rather than playing our way, which is just attack, 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 and usually we get hit on the counter like all the time. This is one of the first games where you really saw us trying to take on a defensive shape, trying to take on a defensive identity in this game. This was around the time when interjection of Francis Coquelin came in. Huge from this point forward into the season. Of course, we dropped points there. The next few games, or the next couple of games of West Ham, Queen's Park Rangers, even though we went down to 10 men in the Queen's Park Rangers because of a stupid headbutt by Olivier Giroud. We still won that game. Went to West Ham, which was a tough game, everybody thought, because West Ham currently was in 4th place at the time. They were in a Champions League spot. Everybody was praising West Ham and that they turned the corner and that they were going to be a tough side to beat. It really wasn't a tough game for Arsenal. It ended up 2-1, but we pretty much dominated that game. And like I said, once that Galatasaray Newcastle, that was when we started to see the old Arsenal playing, attacking, right formation. Now we have a proper DM. Things all changed. At least you thought they were, of course. But then we went to Southampton, and a lot of our confidence just went down to shit because Szczesny had a shit game. Everybody had a shit game. It was an embarrassing loss. It really was, because it just looked like there was a lot of dead legs. There just wasn't any fight. And again, Southampton played us great this season. Not to take anything away from them, they played a perfect game. They had to. in all their fixtures, and but again, the turn of the year, you saw a lot of differences into the side. We beat Hull City in the first FA Cup tie, 2-0. Um, but the Stoke City game at home, coming off that loss at Stoke City, the players had a lot to prove. But this was the game. Um, you know, Aaron Ramsey was back. Mesut Ozil was back. Theo Walcott was being interjected into the side here and there. Um, that's when the season changed for us finally. Was in the turn of the new year. Um, of course, at home we beat them 3-0. The dominated game. It was nothing like the Stoke City away game. Uh, like I said, Mesut Ozil came back. Francis Coquelin was really showing people what he can do. You saw the back line with Koscielny and Mertesacker start to regain that partnership. You saw Monreal come on and just be a great defender for us. This is when Bellerin as well really showcased himself in this game. Um, and then going to Manchester City. This was the turning point, the real turning point of our season was going to Manchester City. Everybody remembers what happened the season prior. We got murdered 6-3. We were top of the league at the time last season. When we went to Manchester City, it was a marquee game, and Manchester City just took it to us. They let us attack, and they counterattacked us the entire game, and they just whooped us. But going into this game, there was a lot of rumors going around that the players pretty much told Arsene Wenger how they wanted to play, that they didn't want to attack, they wanted to take a defensive shape, that they wanted to play more counterattacking football rather than just be an attack all the time. And this game, start to finish, it was perfect. It was Santi Cazorla, the man of the match in that game. Francis Coquelin as well, Olivier Giroud. The spine in that game was perfect. Manchester City didn't know what hit them. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't create any chances. Our defensive shape was perfect. Throughout that game, you could watch that game over and over again and just with a smile on your face. Because this is a turning point when we had actually a plan B finally. Like I said, you can go back to the Liverpool game. We were trying to, mix that in a little bit in that Liverpool game, but then you saw the full results of the training and what the players wanted to do. And again, it was just a turning point. It's what gave us the confidence that we could push for a top four spot again. And beating the defending champions at home, what a huge boost. Going on to the next games, we had Brighton, the FA Cup tie. Theo Walcott scores. Mesut Ozil scores on the returns back into the starting lineup. Getting confidence. Thomas Rosicky had an awesome half volley from Olivier Giroud. One of the goals of the FA Cup tournament. And then we played Aston Villa at home, and we just slaughtered them. Again, playing in the same formation that we always loved, 4-2-3-1. Mesut Ozil playing in the number 10. Olivier Giroud up top. Mixed in with Danny Welbeck again. Alexis Sanchez on the left. Theo Walcott played in this game. This was, I believe, his first Premier League start of the season. Was against Aston Villa. He didn't have the greatest of games, but he did score, I believe, in the game. Can't see it, but then we go to Tottenham Hotspur, and we tried to play the Man City game against them, which was the wrong tactic. When you go away, everybody knows you try to play more defensive, you try to play more counter-attacking football because the home side is just going to do attack, and they're just going to do wave after wave of attack. But considering what the scum have in their back line, what they have in the middle of the park, it's a joke. And for whatever reason, the game got the best of us. And they had more fight in them. Harry Kane, he had a great season. Can't deny that. Just right place, right time for him. In his two goals. Of course, we had the early goal with Mesut Ozil from Danny Welbeck's assist. it almost seemed like after that goal that we were just ready to sit back and park the bus, which was the wrong thing to do. We should have attacked. We couldn't. We just didn't want to attack that game for whatever reason. Uh, but then after that game, we go on a 10-game Premier League run, an unbeaten run. Of course, mixed in with the FA Cup tie is Middlesbrough. Of course, the game that I went to, the knockout stage, the first game against Monaco, which was just a fucking disaster. Um, but that game didn't really deter us from our form in the Premier League. Uh, you're looking at the Everton game. We went 2-0. Queens Park Rangers away 2-1. Manchester United in the FA Cup tie at Old Trafford. Again, another game to give you confidence, to give you that push forward. That not only you can win the FA Cup, but you can finish in top four, and you can cement yourself into that Champions League spot, especially in the top three, so you don't have to play in the playoffs. When West Ham came to our place, again, that was just a dominating performance by Arsenal, 3-0. Of course, we had to go away to Monaco 2-0. We just didn't have enough. We gave it everything we had. We still had time left to score another goal to take us on to the quarterfinals, but it just wasn't, we just didn't have the luck. It seems like with Champions League, sometimes, we just didn't show up in the first leg, and then we tried to come back in the second leg, and the bounces weren't going our way, unfortunately. But again, it just didn't deter us from our form in the Premier League. Newcastle away 2-1. Liverpool at home, dominating performance, murdered them. I mean, that was just I mean, we did whatever we wanted in that game. 4-1. It was just a laugher of a game. This is when Raheem Sterling and all the news came out with him and what he wanted to do, and that he basically wanted to leave, and the contract talks, and Liverpool was just a mess. And it was fun. It was kind of a revenge game from the previous season when we went to Liverpool and got slaughtered 5-1. So it was basically like a revenge game from that game. Again, Burnley going away to Burnley 1-0. The FA Cup tie at Wembley against Reading. Had to go to the extra time, but winning 2-1. Alexis Sanchez with both goals. He loves playing at Wembley. Scored 2 goals in the semifinal, scored a goal in the final. I believe he scored 2 more goals when Chile played England national team. He just loves playing at Wembley. We have to get him there more often because he's just going to score goals. Again, playing Chelsea, this is where our form started to dip, unfortunately. Couldn't score a goal against Chelsea. They parked the bus. They parked about 11 buses in front of goal. Couldn't do anything. We had maybe one good chance in that whole entire game. Just really kind of depressing, honestly. This is what, the league was already lost by this point, but, there was still a mathematical slight challenge that if we won this game, that there's still we were still mathematically contenders to possibly win it. But this is when our form started to dip a little bit. Of course, we went to Hull City and won 3-0. But then, then this wheels started kind of falling off. The league was lost after that Chelsea game. We pretty much almost cemented ourselves into the top 3. But we still should go out there and try to win, and try to dominate, and try to show our quality, and show that we are the better team, and show that killer instinct to not only gain confidence leading up to the FA Cup final, but even for next year. Swansea, of course, Swansea at home, we lost 1-0. Manchester United away at Old Trafford, 1-1. Of course, that was an own goal. We went through almost 300 plus minutes of not scoring a open goal of our own. Of course, in the Manchester United game, it was an own goal by Blackett. Of course, Sunderland game, that was pretty embarrassing to go 0-0 against Sunderland. Yeah, you have to give them credit for defending for their lives to try to stay up. They stayed up in the Premier League, unfortunately. But again, we should have won that game. Again, even though the league was lost, even though we still had a slight chance of getting even top two, um, you still have to try to win these games, and you still have to gain points. Dropping points, regardless if the season is quote unquote over, you still have to go after them. That's what you get paid to do. That's what these players get paid to do. That's what the manager gets paid to do. And the fight wasn't there. You could see it in our 10-game run that the fight was there. We wanted to win. We wanted to get all 3 points every single game. But in these games, you just didn't see it. You saw flashes of it. It's like, oh, okay, we're playing a game. Well, now it's time to turn it on, but we just couldn't score goals. Of course, the West Brom game to finish off the season, Theo Walcott playing up top, hat trick, Jack Wilshere goal of the year, thanks to Arsenal fans. And of course, leading up to the final of the FA Cup and winning that 4-0 and just dominating the game from start to finish, and really showing, yes, we are the better side, and this is how we're going to show that we are the better side. And Aston Villa just didn't have a chance whatsoever. So finishing third in the league, winning a trophy, unless you get dropped out of the Premier League like Wigan did after winning the FA Cup, if you win a trophy, a major trophy, which the FA Cup is, in a season, and especially finishing top four, not having to go through the playoff of the Champions League, yeah, it is a successful season. Does it show progress? That's another question. When you look at some of the different parts of the season, like I said, it's night and day from the first half to the second half. Is that progress, even though we had enough quality to pull through some of those draws that we had in the first half of the season, and we just didn't? That's just another topic. That's another episode that if anybody wants to hear, did we make progress this season? You can say yes and you can say no, but regardless of that, it's still a successful season when you win a major trophy. And when you look at major trophies, it's of course the league, your main domestic cup. Of course, we have two domestic cups with the Capital One Cup, which is mostly for smaller clubs like Chelsea and Man City and some of those clubs that actually win that trophy. And of course the Champions League trophy, it's part of the treble. Any trophy that's part of the treble is a major trophy, and when you win one of those, it is a successful season. And so you have to look at it as a very successful season for Arsenal. And of course, going back to back in the FA Cup, being unbeaten in the FA Cup for 2 straight seasons. Arsenal did it back in 02 and 03, and we're doing it again. And let's go for number 3. Let's press forward and go for the league next year. Let's go for another FA Cup. We're dominating right now. We have the confidence. We're winning trophies. We know how to win trophies. Looking back last season, at the FA Cup final against Hull City, we were nervous. We weren't comfortable. We had a ton of pressure. The fans, the players themselves, they put so much pressure on themselves because of the trophy drought. But you saw in this Aston Villa game, they were all comfortable. And you saw that today. We played like we've been there before, and that is huge. That is huge for a team going forward, of winning a league, winning a Champions League, that they can handle the pressure, that they know what is asked of them going into a cup final and to win a cup final. And they showed that today. Again, night and day between last year's FA Cup final to this year's FA Cup final. Yeah, we still dominated in terms of possession against Hull City, but again, it took until late in extra time, to win that game. To where this game, it was put to bed in the 50th minute once Alexis Sanchez scored the second goal. It was basically, you could say, it was put to bed once Theo Walcott scored in the 40th minute. But again, you could see, that's where I can say, yes, we've made progress. Because all the fans leading up to this, because we had visions of the Hull City game of the FA Cup final last year. Uh, but you're having visions, of that game and the players being nervous and not wanting to make mistakes. But in this game, we just took it by the horns, and we showed our quality and we showed we were a better team. That's just experience. That's just confidence and experience, and that's huge going forward. That's huge going into the next season. That's huge going into when we play in the Community Shield against Chelsea next season. That's going to be huge when we start our Champions League run. That's going to be huge when we start up in the next part of the year, another FA Cup run. That's huge when players have that confidence that they've been there before. So you can say, has progress been made through this Arsenal team? Yeah, you can say that. You can also say progress has been made because we have a plan B now. Players want to defend instead of just attack all the time. They want to be able to counterattack. So you can say that's progress. But then you can say there's not a lot of progress just because of where the points we finished with more points last year than we did this year. You know, again, first half of the season, wrong formation, wrong tactics, wrong, playing players out of position. That's not progress. That's not progress by the manager. But in the second half of the season, yeah, they turned things around. It was a great season. You can't deny that. A lot of people, of course, we're all sad it's over, but at the same time, I think just as fans, because we care so much about the club, we care so much about the players, manager, coaches, everything. We need a break too, instead of being stressed out every single weekend or every midweek games and FA Cup ties and it'll be a nice break because I believe the season starts on August 8th, I believe, which is pretty early. I think it might be because of the Euros. Maybe someone can give me some of that information. I can't remember back in 12 if we started the season early or the 11 and 12 season because of the Euros in 2012. I think that's probably it. But again, it's only about 2 months away. The players are probably going to have a month off, maybe even a month and a half, close to it. It's going to be good for a lot of these players. Coming in from last season or coming from the start of the season, we had a lot of players coming back late from the World Cup. We had a lot of players still tired from the World Cup. And it showed, it definitely showed throughout the first half of the season. And but again, just great season. Going to go into some of the players here a little bit. Talking about player of the year. Player of the year. First half of the season, Alexis Sanchez. I mean, he carried the team all by himself. Scoring all goals, scoring goals for fun, scoring goals in Champions League, scoring goals in the Premier League. Danny Welbeck helped out a little bit. But other than that, there wasn't really any kind of goal scorers. Olivier Giroud was out. Mesut Ozil went out after the Chelsea game. Debuchy was hurt. Aaron Ramsey had a hamstring problem a couple times this season. Jack Wilshere was out in late November. Theo Walcott was just coming back in December time. So he was out for most of the first half of the season. We had some ailments, like Koscielny was out for a little bit of time for his Achilles. We didn't have any squad depth in the defense. I mean, you had Monreal playing center half. You had Debuchy playing center half in one game or two games. It was just crazy, for that first half of the season. And Alexis Sanchez showing that he's a world-class player and showing that he can take a team on his back and carry it. And that's what he did. Tailing off a little bit in the second half of the season, but that's when Francis Coquelin showed himself. That's when Mesut Ozil came back from injury. Aaron Ramsey coming back from injury. Theo Walcott coming back from injury. It really gave us a boost, around that Stoke City game, that players were coming back from injury. And this is when Alexis Sanchez kind of hit a wall. Because just like Mesut Ozil, he even said it himself in his first season, Barcelona, Real Madrid playing in La Liga, they have a winter break. They have a 2 week winter break. Sometimes it's even longer. Sometimes it's 2.5 weeks. Sometimes it's even 3 weeks. Um, and so when he's playing through that, instead of having that extra break, having that extra time off, that extra time to heal up, he hit a wall. Just like Mesut Ozil did last season. He hit a wall, and 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 he ended up getting hurt too. On top of that, Mesut Ozil from last season, his first season, and but Alexis Sanchez hit a wall. But it was good that players stepped up their game. Santi Cazorla from December time to March was an amazing player for us. You were screaming for him to get back to his best. In the 12 and 13 season, he was one of our best players. He scored a ton of goals, assists. He was probably next to Theo Walcott, our best player that season, and he just wasn't there. We were playing him out on the wing because of the Mesut Ozil signing, so he's playing out of position a lot. Of course, with the emergence of Aaron Ramsey from last season, playing at the CM role, scoring goals, there wasn't really a place for Santi other than playing on the wings, and he just didn't have the pace. He doesn't have the pace to really overcome that. He wasn't really playing that great defensively. But in that December time, when they moved him back to the number 10, especially after Mesut Ozil got hurt and we switched back to the 4-2-3-1, what a great player throughout that time. He even hit a wall a little bit in April time, and he got back to his best late in the season, thank God. But you can almost put it in parts of our season of different players stepping up when certain players hit a wall. Alexis Sanchez just carried us in the first half of the season. Santi Cazorla carried us from kind of like December through March, with the emergence back of Mesut Ozil, the emergence back of Aaron Ramsey, Theo Walcott. You know, Alexis Sanchez getting a little refresher. He sat out a couple games. He played, I believe, 51 appearances in this season. A lot of appearances. But again, when you sit him at least one game, or you sub him out, or you sub him in for a game, and you don't play him for a full 90, that helps a player going forward. And he started getting back to his best. Of course, like I said, the Reading game, it was all him and Mesut Ozil that game. Showed why they were world-class players, and our world-class players showed up. But and again, throughout that time too, December until the end of the season, Francis Coquelin. As much as I want to give him the Player of the Year, I have to give it to Alexis Sanchez. 25 goals, 12 assists throughout the season. He was a part of 37 total goals for Arsenal throughout the season. I mean, great player. I mean, you almost have to pinch yourself, as an Arsenal fan. You lived through the years of not buying anybody, selling all of our best players, and last season we bought Mesut Ozil. This season we bought Alexis Sanchez. Two world-class players, two of the best in the world at their positions. Just two of the best players in the world, period. And to watch these guys play, especially Alexis Sanchez, his work rate, his desire, his determination, it was infectious throughout the season. You saw different players take on what he was doing. Oxlade-Chamberlain is one of the prime examples of that. You saw even Santi Cazorla working his ass off. When Francis Coquelin came into the team, that was part of I believe, the Alexis Sanchez effect. He really affected players. Even a Mesut Ozil. I mean, you saw him playing more defensively than he was last season. Any time that he's even played with Real Madrid, even too. You even saw him playing more defensively in the second half of the season. You saw even Danny Welbeck's always had a tremendous work rate, but you saw him even pushing more, being more determined, being more focused, having a even larger work rate, and that's Alexis Sanchez. And that's what happens when you buy world-class players. You saw it with Mesut Ozil when he came in. You saw certain players adapt to his style and start to show when you bring in a world-class player, what that does to the team. Prime example, Aaron Ramsey, of what he showed last season and even this season. When him and Mesut Ozil link up, it's fun to watch. And it's just like Alexis Sanchez. When you see a world-class player train, when you see a world-class player on the pitch playing as hard as possible, being the hardest worker on the pitch, like I said, it's infectious, and you want to play like that. If you want to become a world-class player, that's how you have to play. That's how determined you need to play. That's how much desire you need to show on the pitch. And just a great play. I mean, you can every single one of his goals almost this season has been fun to watch. His assists, his ability to distribute, his vision. Yeah, I mean, there's some. Sometimes he doesn't get rid of the ball like he should, but at the same time, that's just his determination. Sometimes he doesn't see the team really working out. Sometimes he thinks he puts a lot of pressure on himself as a player. There's been times where during the season where even players were telling him not to train so hard. Um, you know, I hated hearing that when players like Theo Walcott said for him to settle down a little bit. And if Theo Walcott wants to become a world class player, that's how he has to train. That's how he has to play. And a lot of the players saw this, and it was just great. I think we should sign at least one world class player every summer window to keep on getting world class players in here because it just makes us better. It makes everybody around them better. You could say that Sanchez, Cazorla, and Ozil are basically our world class players. Aaron Ramsey can be one in the making if he wants to be. Other players too. You can even say Laurent Koscielny is now a world class CM. Just one of the best CMs in the world. But again, the Alexis Sanchez effect, it just affected everybody, affected the team. And it showed, throughout the entire season. And you just can't say enough about him. That's one of the things that you're maybe sad about when the season ends is that you're not going to be able to see him play in an Arsenal shirt until the season starts again, which won't be until August. You can see him this summer. He plays in the Copa America for Chile. It's in Chile this year, so it's going to be interesting to watch. But on that standard, you can see him play. But of course, we all want to see him play in an Arsenal shirt. And again, I'm just continuing on saying it, but just a great player and definitely the player of the season. The second player of the season that I would say is Francis Coquelin. His injection into the team gave us everything that Arsenal fans have been screaming for years. A proper DM. A DM who is going to stay within 5 yards of the back line, who's going to cover for fullbacks, who knows his role. Not like a Mikel Arteta who pushes forward, who plays out of position, who is just thinking attack rather than defend. Francis Coquelin is the reason, in my opinion, of our second half turnaround. You can point at Mesut Ozil coming back, Aaron Ramsey coming back, Theo Walcott, of course the play of Santi Cazorla and Alexis Sanchez, but those guys can't be who they are on the pitch without a proper DM like Francis Coquelin. Prior to this, prior to him being in the team, you could see in past seasons, players didn't attack as well as they could because they were always afraid of the counterattack. They were always afraid, well, I have to track back 50 yards. I might have to track back 40 yards. With a guy like Francis Coquelin in the middle of the park, defending and holding that back line, and keeping those guys in line with a Mertesacker and a Koscielny, even a Monreal, even a Bellerin. It was sunshine. It really was. It was a dream. Something that we've been screaming for years. And we had it. We had it the entire time. But Mikel Arteta got injured, and we had to call Francis Coquelin back from Charlton Athletic, from loan. And once he was injected into the team, he didn't let go. Again, just like Alexis Sanchez, his work rate is phenomenal. His knowledge, his intelligence on the pitch is just I mean, it's second to none, really. Um, I mean, you can look at some of these stats just in the Premier League alone. 19 appearances. He averaged 3.2 tackles a game. This is the huge. Um, this is the huge one. The stat of Francis Coquelin. 3.7 interceptions a game. He led the team in that. Um, you can go to I go to a website called WhoScored.com. They give you a ton of stats on the Champions League and Premier League. They don't go into the FA Cup. I don't know why, but just in the Premier League alone, 3.2 tackles a game and 3.7 interceptions a game. That is huge. That just means he's breaking up counterattacks. That means he's breaking up attacks in general. He had 3.1 clears a game, uh, and then zero point 0.4 blocks a game. He had the best rating according to WhoScored.com of any defensive player that we have. Francis Coquelin had a 7.46 rating out of 10. I mean, and that's just playing 19 games. Imagine if we had him throughout the entire season. We would still be challenging for the league. We wouldn't give up stupid goals early in the season that we gave away. Um, even you can look at in the Premier League alone, he had a better defensive stats than Laura Koscielny, who had a 7.39 per Mertesacker, 7.08. But again, their rating might go down because of a Francis Coquelin, because he is in front of them, protecting them. He was basically the leader of the back line throughout his time when he finally got injected into the side. He really was. He was keeping Mertesacker in line. He was keeping Koscielny in line. He was, he was that voice that we desperately needed. We saw it last year a little bit with Matthew Flamini, but we just didn't see that this year. We didn't see that ever from Mikel Arteta. We didn't see that this season with when Flamini came on and played. Francis Coquelin did that. He kept guys in line. He kept guys, he would yell even at some of the attacking players. You go back to that Manchester City game, and after we scored our goals, you could see Francis Coquelin trying to settle people down and trying to get people back in line and get people refocused. And that's what he did. And, like I said in my last episode of the FA Cup, final review, people are saying that we should go after another CM. That we should get a like-minded CM like we had with Mikel Arteta. That people don't even want a DM in the starting 11. Fucking ridiculous. Do you want our attacking players to attack and not have to worry about defending? Or do you just want to attack all the time and then get killed on the counterattack and be the same idiot who goes on Twitter, who goes on a podcast and says, this team sucks. And we need a DM. Those are the first people who will be screaming for DMs if that happens. He should be the starting DM next season. If we can get someone equal or even lesser, or even better than him, I'm all for it. But we need a DM in this side because Francis Coquelin showed what we lacked. There was the one position that we lacked. Center half because of the depth that we didn't have. But again, throughout the years, that's what we lacked the most is a proper DM. A proper DM who's going to kill counterattacks, who's going to kill attacks, who is athletic. Francis Coquelin is very athletic. He has some pace to him. He doesn't have great pace, obviously. Not too many midfielders really do, especially DMs. But he's one of the faster DMs. Especially in the Premier League. And when you have that type of athleticism, you can play a little bit more off of the back line. You can kind of join in the attack. And he's only going to get better, guys. People were kind of complaining about his passing. I really don't see any type of problem with his passing, to be perfectly honest with you. He does what he's supposed to do. That's his role. And he's only going to get better. He's only 24 years old. He has a lot of more training to do. They can work with him on his passing. They can work with him on his vision to pick out passes. He's good on the ball. I mean, you saw that with this FA Cup final. He was juking players left and right. He was making dribble moves to get around players. Again 24 years old. He has another 8 years in front of him to play. He's only going to get better. People kept on saying throughout the season too, throughout the second half of the season, so at some point he's going to make a dip. He didn't make a dip at all. Like I said, according to WhoScored.com, a 7.6 or 7.46 defensive rating for the season. I mean, just ridiculous. Just a ridiculous stat. If you go to WhoScored.com, just in the Premier League alone, Alexis Sanchez had a 7.81 rating out of 10. Santi Cazorla had a 7.6. Mesut Ozil had a 7.57. Those are our world-class players having the best rating, the overall rating in the team. You expect that. But then who was fourth on that list? Francis Coquelin, 7.46. Laurent Koscielny was fifth with 7.39. Gabriel had 7.36, so that's even though he played limited amount of games, that's bright. That's a bright future right there. Nacho Monreal, another player that you have to really look at and see how successful we were this season, defensively as well. I mean, he was rejuvenated this season. Throughout his first like season and a half with Arsenal, wasn't the greatest. He couldn't really find his place. I know he had a lot of nagging injuries. But he was fully healthy this season, and he played his ass off, especially on that left side. He kicked out Kieran Gibbs for the most part, who is now called up to the England national team. That's how good he played. 7.33 rating. Olivier Giroud has 7.23, and Danny Welbeck had a 7.19. Matthew Debuchy was eighth and a 7.25 with a limited amount of appearances. He only had 10 appearances in the Premier League this season. But that's like our top 10. And even go to our 11th best player according to the ratings. Hector Bellerin also had a 7.19 rating out of 10. 19 years or 20 years old now. Again, the future is bright. The future is bright for him. The young player of the year easily. That's the only player you could probably give that to. Maybe the Ox if he stayed healthy. But Hector Bellerin, the pressure that was on that kid to play, again, the Manchester City game, the Aston Villa game, throughout the entire whole season, which is, a godsend, to be honest with you. More of an attacking threat than defensive threat. But at the same time, he's only going to get better as time goes on. 20 years old. I mean, just imagine that. Hector Bellerin, 20 years old. Francis Coquelin, only 24 years old. Those guys are only going to get better. Danny Welbeck's only 24 years old. People are already writing him off. You have to give a player who goes into a completely different system, a completely different team, and people are already writing him off, and I'm not writing him off. I think he's going to be good for us. Give him an off season, give him an off season, training with Arsene Wenger, the coaching staff. They're going to make him better. They're going to make him what he should have been at Manchester United, in my opinion. I think Louis van Gaal, even David Moyes, they gave up on him for whatever reason. You don't give up on players who have that type of desire and work rate. You can work with those players. You can work on the finishing, the passing. You can make those guys better if you want. If they, obviously Danny Welbeck wants to. You see that kind of determination and that desire in his game. He just needs proper coaching, in my opinion. And you can see the best out of him, in my opinion, going forward. But that'll probably be it for right now. This has gone on long enough. But again, player of the year, Alexis Sanchez easily. Second player of the year, an honorable mention, is Francis Coquelin. Defensive player of the year, Francis Coquelin. You definitely wanted to give it to even Koscielny, but Francis Coquelin was just a rock. He was the reason why we could attack in that second half of the season and why we could do what we wanted to do attacking-wise. So defensive player of the year, Francis Coquelin, easily, of what he showed during the season. Again, just an overall great season. Winning the FA Cup, finishing third, don't have to worry about the playoffs of the Champions League. We're directly into the group stage. We have to really look out for what pot we're going to be in going forward, though. But at the same time, how can you not be satisfied? You can always get better. That's why you play season after season, is to get better. That's why the season start off new. That's why you go into the next season of making more goals, of saying we want to win the league this year. We want to compete in Champions League. We want to even win Champions League. We're still a little bit off of that. I think we need to go after maybe another world-class player this summer, whether it be a goalkeeper, whether it be a winger. We need another world-class player to come in here because those are the difference makers, and we need more difference makers on the pitch. And we just need to stay healthy. If we stay healthy, sky's the limit, to be honest with you. We could probably win the league pretty easily if we stay healthy. Of course, with the new tactics going forward, the new mindset of this team, players, Alexis Sanchez is having a year under his belt. Mesut Ozil now has 2 years under his belt. Francis Conklin has at least a half a season in the Premier League under his belt. It's just only going to get better, hopefully. And yeah, leave your comments. What was your favorite part of the season? Was it lifting the FA Cup for the back-to-back season? Obviously the goal of the season, the goal by Alexis Sanchez in that FA Cup final, which is amazing. 30 yards out, just a banger. The Jack Wilshere goal against West Brom, even the volley that Alexis Sanchez had against Manchester City. But the goal of the season, you would have to give it to Aaron Ramsey and Nick Galatasaray. I mean, on his weak foot, just a rocket shot. I mean, again, we had some of the best goals of the year. You can always say that about an Arsenal side. We always have either some great team goals or some great individual goals. And, it would be pretty hard pressed to, I'd like to see who actually wins it when the FIFA awards, unfortunately, come about, next year in January, to see who's on that list and what kind of goals are scored. Of course, Aaron Ramsey is out of that mix just because of the fact that it was last season or it was last year. But yeah, definitely goal of the season for Aaron Ramsey against Galatasaray in the Champions League at Galatasaray. But other than that, leave your goal of the season. Leave your player of the season, who you thought is Alexis Sanchez, is Francis Conklin, is Santi Cazorla. Any of those players would definitely fit the bill. Even Mesut Ozil, of what he showed in the second half of the season, definitely one of our best players. And yeah, that'll be it. Later.